I want you to picture a scenario. It's actually the opening scene of the source material we're covering today. And honestly, it's the kind of thing that, well, it haunts you a little bit after you read it.
It's basically a ghost story, but, for your career.
Exactly. So the author, Arthur Brooks, is on a plane. And he notices this couple sitting across the aisle. The husband is elderly, but he's clearly someone important.
People are recognizing him.
Right. The flight attendants are treating him like absolute royalty. We're talking about a man who is, by all accounts, a national hero.
Someone who has totally won the game of life.
Yeah. The kind of person we all secretly or openly want to be.
Yeah.
Fame, wealth, respect, the total package.
Right.
But then the plane gets quiet, and Brooks overhears this man talking to his wife. And he isn't celebrating his legacy. He isn't basking in the glow. He's practically weeping.
Wow.
Yeah. And he says to her, "I wish I were dead."
Which is shocking enough just on its own.
It is. But it's the reason why that really sticks the knife in. He says, "I wish I were dead because no one needs me anymore."
That is the core paradox we are diving into today. That story is the catalyst for this whole deep dive into Brooks's book, From Strength to Strength.
It raises a terrifying question, doesn't it?
Completely. How can you do everything right, climb every ladder, ring every bell, and still end up feeling like a total failure at the end of it?
It feels like a glitch in the system.
Yeah.
I mean, you work hard to get successful so you can be happy.
Right.
But the data's saying that for a specific type of person, that success actually sets a trap.
He calls it the striver's curse. And I think it's important we define who we're actually talking to here.
Let's do that.
If you are listening to this deep dive, you are probably a striver. You value professional excellence, you identify with your work, you get a dopamine hit from solving problems and being the go-to person.
Guilty as charged. And I think most of our listeners are in that exact same boat. We define ourselves by what we can do, what we can build, or what we know.
Right. And the argument here is that the very traits that make you successful in the first half of your life, that drive that addiction to progress, are exactly what will make you miserable in the second half.
If you don't change your strategy.
Exactly. If you don't pivot.
So, to help us wrap our heads around this, we're going to structure this deep dive a little differently. Brooks basically presents a slide deck for the rest of your life.
I love this framing.
Yeah, I want us to mentally walk through these slides today, because if we don't understand the data on them, we're going to end up exactly like that guy on the plane.
A strategic presentation for the business of being human. Let's do it.
Okay, so let's pull up the first mental slide. It's a graph, and honestly, it's kind of depressing.
It is if you don't know how to read it. You're looking at a curve that represents fluid intelligence.
Before we get into the curve itself, define that for me. Because fluid intelligence sounds like something I should have, but I'm not 100% sure what it actually is.
Think of fluid intelligence as your raw biological horsepower. It's your working memory. It's your calculation speed. It's your ability to solve a brand new problem that you've never seen before purely by focusing your brain on it.
So this is the whiz kid energy.
Yes.
The startup founder pulling all-nighters, the young coder learning a new language in a weekend.
Exactly. It's the ability to reason, analyze, and innovate rapidly. And here is where the slide gets scary. The curve for fluid intelligence shoots up in your 20s, hits a peak, and then it just falls off a cliff.
And when you say falls off, what kind of timeline are we talking about here? Because I think most of us assume, okay, maybe when I'm 70 or 80, I'll slow down a bit.
No, that is the great misconception. For tasks that require pure fluid intelligence, the peak is much earlier. For athletes, obviously, it's the 20s.
Right.
But for knowledge workers, lawyers, scientists, engineers, financiers, that peak often hits in the late 30s or early 40s.
Wait, hold on. Late 30s, that feels incredibly young.
It does.
That's usually when people are just getting their first big promotions. You're telling me that just as my careers are taking off, my actual brain power is starting to tank.
Where fluid brain power is tanking, yes. The data on this is really clear. Look at Nobel Prize winners in physics.
Okay.
They almost always make their big discovery in their 30s. They might get the actual prize 20 years later, but the raw, innovative work was done when their fluid intelligence was peaking.
But that feels so unfair. If I'm a striver and I've built my whole identity on being the smartest, fastest person in the room, what happens when I'm 45 and I realize the junior associates are just They're just faster than me.
That is the crisis point. That is exactly where the striver's curse kicks in. You feel the decline. You realize you have to work twice as hard to get the same result you used to get easily.
Yeah.
And because you're a striver, what do?
I mean, I'd probably panic. I'd work later. I'd try to force it. I'd try to prove I've still got it, you know?
Exactly. You rage against the decline. You try to extend that first curve. But there's a quote here from the economist Herbert Stein. He had this famous rule: if something cannot go on forever, it will stop.
Stein's law.
Right. You cannot force fluid intelligence to last forever. Biology wins.
And if you fight biology, you lose.
You burn out, or worse, you become addicted to the memory of your own success.
Success addiction.
Yes. It's a literal dopamine loop. You need the hit of being special. And when the hits stop coming because your fluid intelligence is sliding, you basically go into withdrawal.
That brings up the Wall Street executive story from the sources,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
She had everything: the money, the houses, the power. But she confessed she felt completely empty. She was terrified.
She was terrified of becoming a nobody. When your entire self-worth is attached to this idea of, I am the person who solves the hard problems fast, then losing that speed feels like dying.
It's a heavy slide, but it's not the whole presentation.
Thank goodness.
Right. Let's flip to the next mental slide.
Yeah, great.
Because this is the good news part of the data.
It is. If you overlay a second line on that same graph, you see something completely different. While the fluid intelligence curve is crashing down, there is another curve that starts low and keeps rising well into your 50s, 60s, and 70s.
This is the second curve.
This is crystallized intelligence.
Okay. Distinguish this for me. If fluid intelligence is raw horsepower, what is crystallized intelligence?
Crystallized intelligence is wisdom. It's your vocabulary, your general knowledge, and most importantly, your ability to synthesize complex ideas. It's pattern recognition.
I really like the library analogy for this from the reading.
It's the perfect way to visualize it. Fluid intelligence is how fast you can run through the aisles of the library to find a book. You're sprinting.
Right.
But crystallized intelligence, that's knowing exactly which book to pull off the shelf because you've read them all before.
So the young hotshot has the speed, but the older pro has the archive.
Precisely. Think about a senior architect versus a junior coder. The coder can write lines of code at lightning speed.
Yeah, typing a mile a minute.
Right. But the architect can look at the blueprint and say, that structure is going to fail in 6 months when we scale because I've seen this exact pattern 10 times before.
That is crystallized intelligence.
It is. It's about teaching, mentoring, and synthesis.
So the strategy for life, the way you avoid being the miserable guy on the plane, is that you have to jump. You have to jump from the first curve to the second curve.
Yes. You have to stop trying to be the innovator and start being the instructor. You have to move from being the star to being the sage.
But that sounds way easier than it actually is.
Oh, it's incredibly hard.
I mean, let's be real. Become a mentor sounds nice, but in a lot of industries, the sage gets paid less.
Yeah.
The sage doesn't get the magazine cover. It feels like a demotion.
And that is exactly why people don't do it. That's the barrier. Jumping curves requires an ego death.
An ego death.
Yeah. You have to admit that the part of your life where you were the young genius is over. You have to be willing to look less impressive in the short term to be more effective and happier in the long term.
It's admitting you're mortal. Which brings us perfectly to the third slide in our deck. This one is titled Barriers.
Yeah.
And the biggest barrier here is something called objectification.
This is a fascinating concept because usually when we hear objectification, we think about objectifying other people.
Right.
But the argument here is that strivers are masters at objectifying themselves.
We turn ourselves into products.
We become homo economicus. We view ourselves entirely as assets to be managed. I am my job title. I am my net worth. I am my output.
Yeah.
When you judge your value as a human being solely by your professional productivity, you are treating yourself like a machine.
That hits home. I am what I produce. And the problem with machines is that they depreciate.
Exactly.
If I'm just a machine, then when I slow down, I'm broken. I'm obsolete.
That's it. If your identity is the machine that works, then retirement or decline is literally the end of your existence. That's why the man on the plane wished he was dead. The machine was turned off, so he felt he had no purpose.
So how do we fix that? Because there is a specific strategy on this slide, and it involves Michelangelo.
Right. The concept of chipping away. There's this famous idea that when Michelangelo carved David, he didn't add clay to the sculpture to build it up. He chipped away the marble that wasn't David.
So in the first half of life, on that first curve, we are accumulators. We add skills, we add titles, we add connections.
We build up the ego. But to get to the second curve, you have to subtract. You have to chip away the vanity, chip away the need to be the center of attention.
Chip away the obsession with what others think of you.
Exactly. You have to find the human underneath the resume.
That sounds incredibly difficult. It's basically satisfaction through subtraction. But there's a darker shadow on this slide too, isn't there? The fear of death.
Yes. And it's not just being morbid for the sake of it. The point is that the fear of career decline is actually a proxy for the fear of death.
Wow.
When you see your skills slipping, it's a reminder that you are temporary.
So if we want to make the jump, we actually have to confront that head on.
You have to look at it squarely. If you can accept that this story ends, then the transition from chapter 1 to chapter 2 becomes less terrifying. It's just a plot point, not the finale.
Okay, so we stop treating ourselves like machines and we start chipping away the excess. But we can't do this alone. And that brings us to slide 4. This is the support system slide. And the visual here is an aspen grove.
I absolutely love this metaphor. So if you look at an aspen grove, above ground, it looks like a bunch of individual trees. You see a trunk here, a trunk there. They look completely solitary.
Right, just like the striver, standing tall, independent.
But underground, an aspen grove is actually one single massive organism. They share a gigantic interconnected root system. They are literally one plant.
So the trunks are they're just avatars. The real life is in the roots.
Exactly. And here's where the striver fails. The striver spends their entire life polishing the trunk. They want the biggest, tallest, shiniest trunk in the forest. They focus entirely on the individual self.
Their career, their reputation.
Right. And in the process, they starve the roots.
They let the root system die.
They do. And the root system represents relationships, real, deep connection with other people. The research points out something really sad. Many highly successful people are profoundly lonely.
There's a term for this in the sources, deal friends. And I think everyone listening knows exactly what that means.
Oh, absolutely. Deal friends are the people who are in your life because there is a transaction happening. They are useful to you or you are useful to them. Maybe you work together, maybe you network together.
Strivers are great at making deal friends.
The best.
It's the guy you play golf with because he buys your software. Or the person you get coffee with because you might want to hire them someday.
Right. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that until that's all you have. Because here's the thing about the first curve. When it crashes, when you retire or slow down, the deals stop.
And when the deals stop, the deal friends disappear.
They vanish.
That is the nightmare scenario. The phone stops ringing. And if you don't have real friends, people who love you for who you are, not what you do, you are completely isolated.
So the action item on slide 4 is aggressive investment in the roots. You have to pivot from the transaction to the transcendent. You need to build relationships that have zero utility.
Zero utility. I like that. Friends who can't do anything for you.
Exactly. Friends, family, faith. Because when the trunk starts to wither the roots are the only thing that will keep you standing.
Okay, we have one more major concept in this deck. Slide 5. And this one turns everything we've learned in the corporate world completely upside down. It's titled Weakness as Strength.
This is the hardest pill for a striver to swallow. We are trained to hide our weaknesses. Never let them see you sweat. Fake it till you make it. We armor up.
Especially if you're a leader. You're supposed to be the rock. If you show weakness, people lose confidence in you. Or at least that's the fear.
That is the fear on the first curve. But on the second curve, the curve of wisdom and connection weakness, performs a completely different function. There's a story used here about St. Paul.
Biblical figure.
Yes. Paul had a thorn in the flesh. We don't know what it was, a chronic illness, a disability, a temptation, but he begged for it to be removed. And the answer he got was essentially, no, my power is made perfect in weakness.
Now, step away the theology for a second. How does that apply to a secular CEO or a manager?
It's about connection. Think about it. When you are perfect, people admire you, but they can't connect with you. Perfection creates distance. It puts you on a pedestal.
That's true. It's hard to be close friends with someone who never makes a mistake. It's intimidating.
Exactly. But vulnerability creates a bridge. When you admit, I'm struggling with this, or I don't have the answer, or even I'm getting older and I can't do this as fast as I used to, you invite people in.
It reminds me of the fishing metaphor from the text.
Yeah.
Cast into the falling tide.
Yes. It's such a beautiful image. When the tide is going out, you can't force it back in. You can't scream at the ocean to make it high tide again.
Right.
But as the water recedes, it reveals things that were hidden, the structure of the coastline, new pools, new life.
So instead of raging against the dying of the light, you use the twilight to see things you couldn't see at noon.
Beautifully put. You use your decline your weakness as a teaching tool. If you are a mentor, your failures are actually more valuable to your students than your successes.
That makes total sense.
A teacher who never fails is useless. A teacher who says, I fell into this hole, here is exactly how you avoid it. That person is priceless.
So weakness isn't a bug. It's a feature of the second curve.
It is the currency of connection.
Okay, so we've walked through the deck. We've seen the decline of fluid smarts, the rise of crystallized wisdom. We've talked about chipping away the self-objectification, feeding the roots, and embracing weakness.
It is a complete restructuring of how we view success. It's moving from resume virtues to eulogy virtues.
But I want to land this plane, pun intended, with the final concept in the book. Because all of this theory is great, but there's a specific model for how to live this out. The concept of the vanaprastha.
This is the critical piece. Vanaprastha is a Sanskrit term from the Hindu ashrama system of life stages. It literally means retiring into the forest.
Now, to a modern Western ear, retiring into the forest sounds like giving up. It sounds like becoming a hermit.
But that's not what it is. In this framework, life has stages. You have the student stage, you have the householder stage, that's the first curve, where you build your career, raise your family, accumulate wealth.
Right.
But you aren't supposed to stay a householder forever.
Right. If you stay at the party too long, it gets sad.
Exactly. Vanaprastha is the stage where you voluntarily step back from the center of professional life. You move away from the accumulation of money and prestige, and you focus on spiritual growth, on study, and on sharing wisdom.
The key word there is voluntarily.
Yes, that is the ultimate test. Can you walk away from the center of the stage while the audience is still clapping, or do you have to be dragged off?
The text poses that exact question. Are you going to leave the party while you're still having fun? Or are you going to stay until the lights come on, the music stops, and you're the last one standing there holding an empty glass?
The man on the plane stayed too long. He was still trying to be the hero, the householder, long after his season had passed, and that's why he was suffering. The jump to the second curve is essentially entering your own version of vanaprastha. It's saying, I have done enough, now I will give back.
It's powerful stuff. So before we wrap up, we promised an executive summary. There's a 7-word formula that sums up this entire slide deck.
There is. And if you forget everything else about fluid and crystallized intelligence, just remember this. The formula for happiness in the second half of life is use things, love people, worship the divine.
It sounds simple, almost too simple.
But look at it closely. It is the exact inverse of the striver's default setting.
What is the striver's default?
The default is use people, love things, worship yourself.
Wow. Yeah, when you put it that way, it's brutal. We use people to get ahead, those deal friends. We love our things, our awards, our money, and we worship our own image in the mirror.
And that path leads to misery every single time. The transition requires flipping that script entirely. Love people. Use things for their intended purpose, and worship something bigger than your own ego, whether that's God, nature, truth, or the universe. You have to get smaller so your world can get bigger.
That is the challenge we are leaving you with today. We hope this slide deck gives you a bit of a roadmap for that transition. It's scary, we know. The idea of losing that raw speed is terrifying.
It is, but the view from the second curve is totally worth it.
So, here's our challenge to you. Start small. Identify one thing you can subtract from your life today. Not add. Subtract. One status symbol you don't need, one worry about your reputation, one deal friend obligation that completely drains you. Chip it away.
Start feeding those roots. Call a real friend.
And maybe, just maybe, start looking for the path to the forest. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. We'll see you on the next one.
Take care.